I'm Lynn. Welcome all of you to English Practice Channel. Today, we practice many listening lessons are called passive listening. Passive listening is how we get used to the native speaker's accent without focusing too much on the meaning of each word. It'll like the way we enjoy an English song with a clear melody. If we practice listening again and again, we will feel the sound and pronunciation. Now, we start our lesson.
Exercise 1.
Here's your coffee, John.
Thanks, Pauline. Now, shall we start thinking about this talk then? Let's see, it's on the 20th, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. That gives us 3 weeks to plan it. Shall we start by thinking about what exactly we want to include?
Yes, that's a good idea. Now, here's some paper to make some notes.
Right. Now, the talk is about pollution in the inner city. We should include some information to show how polluted they are, shouldn't we?
Yes, it would be interesting to have some figures to show, for example, how much car exhaust fumes pollute the air. We could possibly get them from the Department of the Environment, couldn't we?
Yes. Then at least people would be aware just how serious this problem is. And then we could go on to point out where all this carbon monoxide comes from.
You mean, for instance, cars and lorries?
Do we have any statistics about how much the number of cars in the inner city has grown?
Yes, that's no problem. I think car owners should see just how much it has increased. People like to use their own cars all the time, don't they?
Yes, it's quite incredible, really, especially as the bus service here where we live is not bad. I mean, in other cities the public transport system is terrible, but at least the city council has given grants to improve it here.
But I still wish people would use it more. Should we mention ways of cutting down on the number of private cars by introducing, for example, a park and ride scheme so shoppers can leave their cars outside the city centre and travel in by bus?
Yes, we could save that until the end of the talk as a possible solution. And how about the problem of the lack of parks and green areas? There aren't many here, are there?
No, that's a definite point to mention.
Okay, let's see. Cars, parks. How about cycle lanes? They've been very successful in other places in reducing the number of cars in the inner city.
That may be asking for too much. We've been asked to write a leaflet about the subject too, so maybe we could include it in that instead.
Yes, I suppose we can't ask for everything at once. But I really think we ought to say something about the lorries which are allowed to drive through the city centre.
You mean to suggest an idea to reduce their numbers?
That's not enough. We need the council to introduce a law to ban them altogether. I know the shopkeepers won't like it, but...
Yes, it'll be difficult, but it's necessary to make people aware of how much they pollute the air. So let's make a note of that too. Banning lorries in the city centre.
Yes, and shoppers will feel safer with no lorries there. It's definitely time we had more pedestrian precincts too. Should we include that?
I'm not sure. I'd rather keep this talk simple. The council won't like it if we make too many demands, will they?
No, they won't. Okay, well then, let's see. So far, we've got these ideas. Look at the number of...
Exercise 2.
Man has always been curious, and since prehistoric times he has looked for new lands to conquer. First he explored his cave, then the land, next the sea, and eventually the air. Now, finally, man is exploring space, and dreams of leaving the Earth have come true. This wish to leave the Earth and reach other planets was first mentioned in the 2nd century AD, when a Greek, Lucian of Samos, wrote 2 fantasies about men who went to the moon. One used a pair of wings made by himself, while the other was carried there by a waterspout during a storm. The moon was the obvious destination in early literature, as it is the nearest planet to the Earth and has clearly visible markings which led to imaginative conjecture about life there. But after Lucian, for the next 1,400 years, no other writings about travelling to the moon have survived. Man seemed content in his belief that the Earth was the most important planet in the centre of the universe, and therefore there was no necessity to leave it. This view was reinforced by the Christian Church, and in 1543 Copernicus was condemned as heretical when he published his revolutionary theory that the sun was the centre of the universe, and the Earth, the moon, and other planets revolved about it. Although this theory was criticised, it started men thinking about the stars again. Not long afterwards, the first telescope was invented in Holland, and Galileo, the brilliant Italian astronomer, used one to explore the heavens and discover much new information about the planets. When his observations were published in 1610, the Church threatened to excommunicate him, so he retracted most of his statements. But man's imagination had been stirred by this new knowledge, and in 1634, Kepler, the German astronomer who had discovered how the planets moved round the sun, published a story about a journey to the moon. His hero was transported there by magic moon people who could fly through space. Included in the story was a detailed description of the moon's surface, which Kepler had seen through his telescope. After Kepler's book, there were many more stories about space travel and voyages to the moon. Mostly they were fantasies, but some contained attempts at discussion of space travel, describing physical conditions on the moon, and proposing ways in which man could possibly live there. Rockets were first suggested as spaceships by Cyrano de Bergerac in two space adventures written in 1649 and 1652. He was also the first writer to send his space travellers to the sun as well as to the moon. But when these books were written over 300 years ago, no one seriously thought that it would be possible to travel in space. It was not until Jules Verne, the French novelist, wrote his famous story, From the Earth to the Moon, in 1865, that any attempt was made to apply known scientific principles to spacecraft. Man had been experimenting with flying ever since 1783, the advent of the first hot air balloon. But although various gliders and airships were invented, it wasn't until 1903 that the first powered flight was made by the Wright brothers in a wooden biplane. By this time, H.G. Wells had already published his famous space stories, The Time Machine and The First Men on the Moon. So, once again, writers were leading the way. Wells's prophecy in the latter story wasn't to come true until 1969, when the two Americans, Armstrong and Aldrin, finally stepped out onto the moon's surface. Since then, rockets have landed on Venus and Mars, and with the launching of the space shuttle, it will not be long before men visit other planets. Then it will be interesting to see if Wells's other prophecy will come true and man will travel faster than light. Will he, in fact, build his own time machine and travel through time as well as space? Many modern science fiction writers have gone far beyond this speculation and have their heroes teleporting from spaceship to planet with the greatest ease, dematerializing and materializing again at will, and making loops with time to unite past and future without effort. How much of this will come true, we can only guess. But one thing we can be sure of is that writers will continue to stimulate our imagination with marvelous adventures, spectacular prophecies, and astounding ideas, some of which, no doubt, come true and change fiction to fact.
Exercise 3.
Now we turn to Pat Maynard, Senior Lecturer in Education at King's College London, to talk about her new book on co-educational schools, A Mixed Blessing, which is published today. Pat, your findings make fascinating reading. They seem to suggest that girls do not benefit from being educated in mixed-sex co-educational schools.
Well, I think they do more than suggest that. It is very clear from my research that girls are at a disadvantage in mixed-sex schools.
Can you give us some examples?
Certainly. We found, for example, that the behavior of boys in the classroom towards girls actively discourages girls from speaking. When a girl tries to speak, typically boys fold their arms, lean back in their chairs, and groan or pull faces. They look bored and even make comments like, "Turn it off," or "Pull its plug out." Now, if you were treated to insulting behavior like that, what do you think your reaction would be? It would take considerable courage to continue. And in fact, we found that most girls learn that keeping quiet rather than contributing to the lesson in any active way was the most sensible thing to do.
Indeed. So you found that boys do most of the talking in the classroom?
Yes. And not only do boys dominate the classroom verbally, but they do so physically as well. One girl, for example, told me that boys deliberately take up a lot of room. If a girl wants to get up and get something, she has to climb over boys' legs, blocking the aisles. Then we noticed that boys will deliberately lean across a girl's desk to each other, putting their arms all over her work in the process. And then, even worse, if the girl protests, he will act with astonishment as if he hadn't noticed that there was a girl sitting there.
That seems extraordinary, Pat. But what evidence do you have?
For example, we've got diagrams of classroom seating to show that boys dominate the teacher's line of vision and push girls to the edge of that vision. Another thing, we have many recordings of teachers telling girls to be quick when they're speaking, because if they're not, then the boys will start to make a noise and disturb the class. It's easier for the teacher if she or he pays more attention to the boys, because it's the boys and not the girls who cause the trouble. Girls don't make a noise when boys are talking.
But what about the argument that single-sex schools do not prepare girls, and boys too, for that matter, for life?
What goes on in mixed-sex schools is exactly what goes on in the outside world. Men, or in this case boys, dominate women, in this case girls. This is what people call normal behavior. It is precisely for this reason that I would argue that girls should go to single-sex schools where they will not be dominated by boys and where they will have a chance to develop their potential without interference. Let's take our most famous example, Margaret Thatcher. Where would she be now if she had gone to a mixed school? But she was fortunate. She went to a school where she had a chance to speak, to learn how to express herself, to be listened to with respect and attention. So she was able to develop the confidence to go out into the world, a man's world, and to resist attacks from men. My research shows that this is what girls need.
Well, on that very interesting point, we must say thank you, Pat Maynard. Her book, A Mixed Blessing, is published today. Price £3.95.
Exercise 4.
The trouble with a long weekend in Wales is that a long weekend is too short. There just isn't enough weekend for what Wales has to offer. Take the Welsh coastline. Whichever way you like your sand, you'll find it in Wales. For the active, there are surfing beaches all round the coast. At Marlow Sands, at Aberdaron, and particularly at Rhossili Beach on the Gower Peninsula, which offers some of the best surf in Europe. Sailing too is widely available, with yachting centres such as Tenby in the south, Aberdyfi in mid Wales, and Abersoch on the Len Peninsula in the north. There are big open beaches and there are small secluded bays and coves. The 6 miles of Pending Sands, for instance, in Carmarthen Bay, are so long and wide that they are frequently used for different kinds of racing events. While Llandwyn Bay, on a southern corner of Anglesey, offers 4 miles of sand and dune and countless vantages for the spectacular view across the bay to Snowdonia. Barrow Bay in the Pembrokeshire National Park is as secluded as they come, and like Munt, a golden sandy beach trapped in a tiny sheltered cove at the southern end of Cardigan Bay, basks in tranquility. And of course, there are many old fishing villages, Llangranog and Barmouth among them, whose charm has increased as the fleets of ships have declined. These days, you see, the fishing in Wales is much more for pleasure than profit. For sea fishermen, rivers like the Dee and the Usk provide some of the most available salmon fishing in the UK. Is it any wonder that Wales lures fishermen in droves? And is it any wonder that there are hundreds of cosy lake and riverside inns to accommodate them? Wales is teeming with interesting places to stay and interesting things to do.
Exercise 5.
Hello, Daniel. How are you?
Not so bad, thanks. What about you?
To tell the truth, I've got a terrible cold. Achoo!
Oh, sorry to hear that. Poor you. Maybe it's the change in the weather, or maybe you've been working too hard lately.
Well, it must be the weather. Achoo!
Bless you. Have you taken any medicine?
No, I haven't. Can you recommend anything?
No, let me see. I got some tablets a couple of months ago when I had a cold.
Do you remember the name?
Not exactly, but they were black and white capsules, sort of cylindrical shaped, and the label on the bottle had a name printed at the top in block letters, and I think the bottle was square. I'm not exactly sure. The name might have been something like Vigilan or Vegilan.
How is it spelt?
If I remember correctly, it's Vegilan.
Vegilan. I'll just make a note of that. Thanks.
Not at all, and I hope you feel better soon.
Me too. By the way, Daniel, where's the nearest chemist?
Oh, that's easy. From here you go directly south to the 2nd Main Street, and then you turn left. Continue straight along past the church, and at the next intersection turn right. It's on the left, the second shop after the bank, which is on the corner. You can't miss it.
I think I know it. It's just opposite the shoe shop, and there's a greengrocer's between it and the bank.
You got it. Mind how you go.
Thanks. Well, I'm off now. Bye.
Cheerio. See you soon.
Exercise 6.
Hello? Hello?
Pierre Farabolini speaking.
Mr. Farabolini, this is Hilary Beecham from Compact.
Oh, hello, Hilary.
I've got some bad news for you. I've just checked with the airport and I've heard that your plane will be delayed by 2 hours.
I see. Well, what do you think?
Well, first of all, your taxi is due to arrive in half an hour.
Well, I really don't want to spend all that time waiting at the airport. Could you book it a bit later?
Yes, certainly.
So I think I'll go into South Town and do a bit of shopping, buy a few presents for the family. Where's the best place to go to look at the shops?
It's quite difficult to explain. Let me think. It'd be much easier if you had a map.
Just a moment. I've got one in my pocket, right.
Okay. In that case, I'll explain how to get to the town centre from the hotel. It's about a 15-minute walk, or you could go by taxi.
No, I'm quite happy to stretch my legs.
Well, you turn right out of the hotel and carry straight on for about 200 meters. Then you come to a roundabout. Take the first exit. To go left.
So, right out of the hotel, then I go straight on until I come to a roundabout, and then I take the first exit.
Yes, that's right. Then you walk along there for about another 150 meters, and then you come to another roundabout. There you go right.
So I go to the next roundabout and turn right.
Yes. And then you carry on for another 100 meters, and then you come to a third roundabout. There you go straight over the roundabout, and then take the first left.
Hang on a minute. Let me just check that I've got that. I go to the next roundabout, go straight over, and then take the first on my left.
Yes. Then at the next junction, turn right, and then immediately left. And that's the beginning of the main shopping area.
Okay. Just let me go over that last bit. I carry on until the next junction and turn left and then right.
No, the other way round. At the junction, you turn right and then left.
Okay, I've got it. Thanks very much.
Oh, don't mention it. I hope you find something for your family. Oh, yes, I nearly forgot. I'll ask the taxi to collect you from the hotel at 5 o'clock.
At 5, that's fine.
Bye.
Bye.
Exercise 7.
Hello, Evergreen Hotel. Can I help you?
Yes, good afternoon. I wonder if you have a single room with a private bathroom for tonight, please.
Let me just check. Single room with private bathroom just for tonight. Yes, we have a vacancy. Would you like to make a booking?
No, I'll come around now if that's okay. What's the address, please?
239 Smith Street.
I'll just write that down. 239 Smith Street. Okay, I'll see you in about 30 minutes.
Goodbye. John, we've got a guest coming. We can put her in number 8.
Dear me, it's getting dark earlier and earlier. What time is it, Rose?
4:30.
Oh, that Mr. Lieber should be checking in soon, shouldn't he?
He said in his letter that his flight was due in at 3:10 and that he'd be coming straight here from the airport. By the time he gets here, it'll probably be 5:30. There's a lot of traffic at this time of day. Wait a minute. There's someone coming in now.
Hello, good to see you. You must be Mr. Lieber. How was your flight?
Not too bad. Once I've had a shower and a shave, though, I'll be a different person.
Hello, Mr. Lieber. You got in earlier than expected. It's just gone 4:30.
Yes, well, the traffic wasn't too bad. My flight came in 15 minutes earlier as well.
And that's the TV lounge over there. Now, breakfast is at 8 and dinner at 6. Well, here's the key to your room. I think you'll like it. Number 7's on the first floor, next door to the bar. It's got a lovely view. It looks onto the lake and the park.
Oh, by the way, I'm expecting somebody over in about 20 minutes. As soon as I've unpacked, I'll come downstairs. So could you tell him that I'll be waiting in the TV lounge?
Yes, certainly.
He's an Australian, a very tall man with glasses. You can't miss him.
I'll keep an eye open for him. Oh, by the way, will you be wanting an early morning alarm call?
Later that afternoon, after his meeting, Mr. Lieber asked Mrs. Henkel for street directions. As you listen, decide which picture best fits the information given. Hello, Mr. Lieber. Your visitor found you.
Yes, thanks. Listen, I have to get into town. Which is the best way to get to the city centre from here?
It's not very far at all. There's a taxi rank in the square just at the end of the street here, or you could even walk. It's about half an hour's walk if you're not feeling too jet-lagged. There's a train service from Martin Street Station, but it'd take you about 15 minutes to get to the station from here. What part of the city do you want?
I need to get to the Australian consulate. Do you know where that is?
Let me have a look. Oh, right. Your best bet in that case would be the bus. There's a stop on the opposite side of this road. Can you see it? Just past that red coach. You can get off at the Grey Hall. It's, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 3 stops down. Better ask the conductor to tell you when you're there, just to be on the safe side. When you're at Grey Hall, just keep on walking to the end of the block. Turn left into MacDonald Street, and you'll see a big cinema on the right. The consulate's just opposite. You can't miss it.
Yeah. Opposite the cinema in MacDonald Street. That sounds easy enough. Thanks very much. See you at dinner. 5:30, wasn't it?
Exercise 8.
Good evening, everyone. Here is the summary of the news.
Shots were fired in a South London street by escaping bank robbers.
4 rock fans died in a stampede at a concert in Chicago.
And how an Air France Concorde was involved in the closest recorded miss in aviation history.
Now the news in detail.
Shots were fired this morning in the course of an 80-mile-per-hour chase along Brixton High Road in London. A police constable was injured by flying glass when a bullet shattered his windscreen as he was pursuing a car containing 4 men who had earlier raided a branch of Barclays Bank at Stockwell. Police Constable Robert Cranley had been patrolling near the bank when the alarm was given. The raiders made their getaway in a stolen Jaguar, which was later found abandoned in Croydon. Officials of the bank later announced that £16,000 had been stolen.
4 people were killed and more than 50 injured when fans rushed to get into a stadium in Chicago yesterday where the British pop group Fantasy were giving a concert. The incident occurred when gates were opened to admit a huge crowd of young people waiting outside the stadium for the sale of unreserved seat tickets. People were knocked over in the rush and trampled underfoot as the crowd surged forward. The concert later went ahead as planned, with Fantasy unaware of what had happened. A police spokesman said that they had decided to allow the concert to proceed in order to avoid further trouble. There has been criticism of the concert organisers for ensuring that all the tickets were sold in advance. Roy Thompson, leader of Fantasy, said afterwards that the whole group was shattered when they heard what had happened. They are now considering calling off the rest of the United States tour.
The United States Air Force has admitted that a formation of its fighters and an Air France Concorde recently missed colliding by as little as 10 feet. The Air Force accepts the blame for what was the closest recorded miss in aviation history. According to the Air Force spokesman, when the Concorde was already 70 miles out over the Atlantic on a scheduled flight to Paris from Dulles International Airport, Washington, 4 US Air Force F-15s approached at a speed from the left. The lead plane missed the underside of Concorde's nose by 10 feet, while another passed only 15 feet in front of the cockpit.
Forest fires in the south of France have claimed the life of another fireman as they continue to rage in the hills between Fréjus and Cannes. Fanned by strong westerly winds, the flames are now threatening several villages and many holiday homes have had to be abandoned. The French army was called in yesterday to assist the 1,500 firefighters that have so far been unable to contain the spread of the blaze.
And that's the end of the news.
Exercise 9.
Hi, Mum. How are things?
Oh, hello, Jane. Are you all right?
Yeah, great. I just thought I'd phone to let you know we're okay. It's all really wonderful. The weather's fantastic. I'm sitting here in short sleeves and I'm still hot. I can't believe it's December. Did you get my card?
No, the postman hasn't been here for a couple of days. But you know what the post's like at this time of the year. They've probably got a backlog to catch up on. How was your flight in the end, by the way?
Oh, awful. It was a typical charter. We were delayed and had to sit around for hours, so we didn't take off until after midnight, and it was 5 a.m. before we got to the hotel.
Oh dear, what a pity.
But we're making up for it now. On Monday, we had a great day in the beach, just lying in the sun and swimming. The water's lovely. You know, not at all cold. That was to recover from Sunday when we hired a car from one of those rent-a-car agencies and drove all around the island, up into the mountains. It was really spectacular. I mean, the scenery is wonderful.
Oh, that's good. I can see you're going to have a good fortnight.
Yeah, it's all going by too fast. A fortnight is too short. I wish now we'd booked for 3 weeks instead. Still, can't be helped. Listen, do you think you could come and meet us when we get back? The plane gets in at about 6:15 on the 8th. Let's see, I have the tickets here. Yes, it says arrive 6:15 on January the 8th.
Yes, of course, dear, don't worry, we'll be there. Now, just make sure you put lots of cream on if you're lying in the sun in all that heat.
Well, actually, I fell asleep on the beach the other day and had a really red nose, all peeling and burnt.
Well, be careful. And what's John up to?
Oh, he's having a lie down. He isn't feeling very well today. I think it's something he ate. We had a big meal out last night, so perhaps the food was too heavy. You know, they eat really late here. We still have another hour before dinner.
Good heavens. We had our supper hours ago.
Exercise 10.
Good afternoon, Mr. Brown. Do sit down. Now, tell me, what made you apply for this job?
Well, I've been wanting to improve my position for some time, and it seemed to me that the job you advertised would give me an opportunity to learn more about marketing and sales techniques in general.
Where are you working at present, Mr. Brown?
Well, actually, I haven't got a job at the moment. I had a job as chief clerk in the buying department of a retail store, Johnson & King. I expect you've heard of them. But to tell the truth, I didn't quite hit it off with the sales manager.
Oh, why was that, Mr. Brown?
Well, he was rather old-fashioned in his methods, and the sales policy of the firm seemed to me too slow. I'm a great believer in the personal approach to selling. I took a course in business management at the London Commercial College, and I'm afraid I found Johnson & King's methods very out of date. They first opened in 1880, you know, and I don't think they've changed their ideas since then.
Really? In that case, you may be interested to know that our firm first started business in 1870, and we believe that the old slogan, "The customer is always right," still holds good today. I'm afraid our chairman, Samuel Jackson, great-great-grandson of the original founder of the firm, Josiah Jackson, does not approve of high-powered modern selling technique, and with some justification, as our export figures show. We base all our sales technique on Peterson's theory of salesmanship, published in 1900. I presume you've read it.
Oh, well, actually, no. But I'll make a point of getting one from my local library without delay.
Do that, Mr. Brown, and then come and see me again.
Exercise 11.
Do you know what, Tom? It won't be long before we'll all be travelling to space in a cable car.
A cable car? What do you mean? A sort of skylift?
Well, yes, I suppose so.
You must be joking. Where on earth did you get that idea from?
Oh, I've just been reading it in a book called Apes to Astronauts by Adrian Berry. He's the science correspondent of the Daily Telegraph, so he should know what he's talking about. He says, wait a minute, I've got it here, page 28. A cable car to the heavens.
Oh, honestly, Jane, you surely don't believe all that stuff you read in those sci-fi books?
It's not science fiction, it's a fact. Hang on, I'll read you what he says. The space writer Arthur C. Clarke, to whose inspiration we owe the communications satellite, recently outlined a proposal for a new means of space travel, which, he admitted, is so outrageous that many of you may consider it not even science fiction, but pure fantasy. Shall I go on?
No, just tell me how he thinks it could be done.
Well, it sounds quite simple, really. One end of a cable, 23,000 miles long.
How long?
23,000 miles. Do listen. One end of a cable, 23,000 miles long, would be attached to a point on the Earth's equator, and the other to a satellite in geostationary orbit.
So?
The cable would be absolutely tight between the 2 points, and the elevator would travel up and down, carrying people and freight. According to Arthur Clarke, it's the only way to travel in space without using rocket engines, which would make it much more economical. I wonder if it would be more comfortable.
It sounds pretty uncomfortable to me, and heaven knows what speed it'd be travelling at. What would happen if the cable broke?
Oh, he explains all that. Apparently, the most likely place for it to break would be at or near the ground. And if that happened, it wouldn't fall down, it would fall upwards.
Upwards? Yes, I suppose it would.
Yes, sounds funny, doesn't it? Something falling upwards. Anyway, it wouldn't matter too much either if the cable broke away from the high end. It'd remain rigid until it could be reattached to the satellite. I don't quite see why.
Well, it would be the pull of gravity from above. Anyway, who'd want to be stuck in an elevator attached to a rigid cable thousands of miles up in space? I suppose he doesn't say what would happen if it broke in the middle.
Actually, he does. He says it would be dangerous if the break occurred at any altitude up to 15,000 miles because the bit attached to the Earth would... what does he say? Oh, yes. Collapse and wrap itself around the equator like a whiplash.
Whiplash?
You know, the long bit of cord or leather on a whip. Anyway, even that would only be really catastrophic if the cable was made of steel or some other metal. Metals are much too heavy. The cable would have to be made of some material capable of suspension without snapping.
But I thought you said the cable would be 23,000 miles long.
I did, but the 3,000-mile breaking length is because of gravity.
Well, all I can say is you'll never catch me going to space in a cable car. I'd rather keep my feet on the ground, thank you very much.
Thank you to practice with me. See you next lesson.